So today we'll speak on Bhagavad-gita chapter 2, text 20. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad-gita chapter 2, text 20. We're going to read out verse and purport. न जयते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्य शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने sharire. Translation: For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Purport. Qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental part of the Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. Sometimes the soul is called the steady or kutastha. The body is subject to 6 kinds of transformations. It takes its birth from the womb of the mother's body, remains for some time, grows, produces some effects, gradually dwindles, and at last vanishes into oblivion. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born, but because he takes on a material body, the body takes its birth. The soul does not take birth there, and the soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death, and because the soul has no death, it therefore has no past, present, or future. He is eternal, ever-existing, and primeval. That is, there is no trace in history of his coming into being. Under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc. of the soul. The soul does not at any time become old as the body does. The so-called old man therefore feels himself to be in the same spirit as in his childhood or youth. The changes of the body do not affect the soul. The soul does not deteriorate like a tree, nor anything material. The soul has no byproduct either. The byproducts of the body, namely children, are also different individual souls, and owing to the body, they appear as children of a particular man. The body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor change. Therefore, the soul is free from the 6 changes of the body. In the Kat Upanishad 1-18, we also find a similar passage which reads, Na jayate mriyate va vipaschin nayam kutaschin na babhuva kaschit ajonitya shashvato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. The meaning and purport of this verse is the same as in the Bhagavad-gita. But here in this verse, there is one special word, vipaschit, which means learned or with knowledge. The soul is full of knowledge or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. Sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to the clouds or for some other reason. But the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is there for daytime. As soon as there is a little light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme Consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of the individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. But Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad-gita would be useless. There are two kinds of souls, namely the minute particle soul, Anu-atma, and the super soul, Vibhu-atma. This is also confirmed in Kat Upanishad 1-20 in this way. Anor aniyan mahato mahiyan atmasa jantor nihito guhayam tam akratu pashyati vita shoko dhatu prasadan mahimanam atmanaha. Both the super soul, Paramatma, and the atomic soul, Jivatma, are situated on the same tree of the body, within the same heart of the living being. And only one who has become free from all material desires, as well as lamentations, can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. Krishna is the fountainhead of the super soul, also, as it will be disclosed in the following chapters. And Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Kudale Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Kudale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desha Tarini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare. So once again, we are discussing from Bhagavad-gita chapter 2, text 20. And the verse translation again. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So today we are discussing an amazing verse, an amazing topic. This is the topic of the soul. So this is amazing. It says that the soul is amazing in chapter 2 of text 29 of Bhagavad-gita. Ascharyavat pashyati kashchidenam, ascharyavat vadati tathaiva chanya, ascharyavat chainam anya shrunoti, shrutvapienam veda navachaiva kashchit. Translation. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. So, the amazing topic of the soul. Why is the soul said to be so amazing? Because we can see that it is one small particle of consciousness which is supporting this, running the whole body. This is a human body. And then we have a great whale, we have elephants. Just a small soul is in charge of, the cause of that whole, the life in that body, and how that body is animated and moving, and all the processes in the body are taking place only because of the presence of the soul, which is 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. That is the measurement of the soul. Yet it has some amazing power, tremendous transcendental power. Because of the soul, living entities, say like human beings, construct whole cities and running whole organizations. That's because of the soul. So in the purport it's explained here that the soul is kutastha. Kutastha means steady. In the sense that explanation is given that, if you look at here in the purport, he undergoes no changes like the body. Actually, the soul, which is us, as mentioned in Bhagavad-gita, chapter 2, text 13, the soul does not undergo any changes as the body does. Therefore, it's called kutastha. It's known as kutastha. The body is subject to different transformations. Again, we look at this purport. Okay, so it says here, the body has 6 kinds of transformations. It takes its birth, now the first one is, it takes its birth from the womb of the mother's body. Then, number 1. Number 2, remains for some time. Number 3, grows and grows. Number 4, produces some effects like children. Gradually dwindles like old age. And at last vanishes into oblivion. That is death, and after death, the body degenerates. Okay, however, the soul, however, does not go through such a change. We do not undergo such a change. The soul is deathless, aja, because it does not take birth. So if something doesn't take birth, then it won't die. So the soul remains as it is, and therefore it's called kutastha, steady. We can just think about our own life. At age 5, we can remember how we were and different events in our life. And then age 15, age 20, I don't know, some of you are less than 20 or more than 20. Age 30. Now, throughout our life, the body is changing. So many things change. Still, we understand that I'm the same person. I may have some more experiences, but I'm the same person. And that I-ness, identity, which is not changing, which is fixed, kutastha, that is the soul. This is one way to understand about the soul. Whereas the body changes constantly, soul is not changing. So that is the soul. That is the presence. So what is the soul? It is the I, the identity in the body. It is the consciousness in the body, the life force. So as the verse says, no birth and no death for the soul. It also says in the purport that this soul has no byproducts. Notice that if we see a family, then we understand that the children, these other bodies were produced by a certain body, mother body, produced the children body with the help of the father body. In that way, we can say that those children bodies are byproducts of the 2 other bodies. They're the byproducts. Byproducts, in other words, children. So the children, they're also individual souls. The byproducts are only for the body, not for the soul. So on bodily concept, we identify with family. We'll also identify with our state or nation, religion, so many things related to the body. Because we see that there's similarity in these bodies and those bodies. They're all born in the same land, or these bodies all took birth from same father and mother. So on bodily conception, there's so many different identities that people identify with. That is bodily conception, but that's not true. We are not the body, we are the soul. So on the body platform, there's so many different identities people identify with, but none of them are true. One has to come on the spiritual platform. And if we do, we'll realize that the soul has no byproducts. The different relations that we are now relating to in terms of family, society, state, religion, nationality, caste, those pertain to the body. But gradually we realize I'm not the body. Then we realize that we are not actually connected with all these things. It's illusory. Rather, the soul is connected with all souls, because all souls come from Krishna. Aham bija pradapita. Krishna says, I am the seed-giving father of all living entities. So the soul has no byproducts, and therefore on the spiritual platform, when one more and more realizes his identity as a soul, not only does he become disconnected, because On the body platform, one is selfish. Selfish in the sense, how does this word originate? Self, the self. You're just identifying with things connected to the body. Selfish, in other words, he's concerned about his body and bodies related to his body, or bodies in the same country or state or religion. That is selfish. But as one develops in bhakti, then he identifies with the soul. And for the soul, the relation is with all souls, not just one particular soul or one particular group of souls pertaining to the body. So this is the conception of aham mameti, I and mine. The soul, aham means I, mameti means mine. So people identify very strongly with, in this material world, with their body. So things connected to the body, they consider theirs. This is a disease. Aham mameti, my car, my house, my family, mine, or I. This is called aham mameti conception, which is tying us to this material world. It's something which we need to overcome, actually. So soul is connected to all souls. It's one big spiritual family. The soul is, what is the soul? It's a particle of consciousness. The soul has consciousness, but it's very small. It exhibits consciousness. And actually that consciousness is the symptom of the soul. One may not actually see the soul, but how do we know that there is a soul present anywhere? Because of consciousness. So people sometimes ask, can you show me the soul? Where is the soul? First of all, the soul is so small and we cannot even see it. Even if I show you, we cannot see it. It's 1/10,000th tip. Just like we cannot see a virus. We cannot see a virus with our eyes. It's not something new. If I start to claim that I don't believe in virus, let me see it with my eyes. Otherwise, I don't believe it. That's not intelligent. Because there are many things which we cannot see with our eyes. So if we cannot see something, it doesn't mean it's not there. Okay, someone has a mind or intelligence. I cannot say, show me your intelligence. Otherwise, I don't believe you have intelligence. No, it's not intelligent. We have so much faith in these eyes that, oh, I can see, show me. I may show you, but you may not see. First of all, I cannot even see behind the mirror, behind the wall. There are walls here, but behind the wall, I cannot see. So how am I going to see Supreme Personality of Godhead? Or how am I going to see the soul with these eyes? So these eyes are not really to be seen. Cannot really be used to see much. Rather, the soul can be seen by hearing about the soul, and by hearing about God, then we can see. It's a different way of seeing. Sometimes someone doesn't understand the concept. You explain it to him, and what does he say? Oh, I see. I see. It means he can see. How? By getting enlightened, by hearing, then he could see. So in that way, we can see by hearing. So we can see the soul by hearing. We can see God by hearing. So, for example, I'll give an example. Like a doctor, a patient comes in and he tells the doctor his symptoms, and the doctor looks in his eyes, looks at his tongue, looks at his throat, and he immediately can diagnose that you have an infection or you have a fever. He may also tell him that you have jaundice if he's yellow. How does the doctor tell? By symptoms. Even without seeing the soul, just by seeing the symptoms, the doctor knows. So we can tell things by their symptoms. Another example. The sun cannot be, if I'm in my room, I cannot see the sun. So if I take a nap and I open my eyes and I want to know whether it's night or day. So what do I check? I check for light. Immediately I look out of the window and I see sunlight. Immediately I can conclude that it's daytime. without seeing the sun, I concluded that. But how is that? Because I saw the sunlight. By seeing the sunlight, I could conclude. The sunlight is a symptom of the sun. Similarly, if I want to see the soul, I just have to see the symptom of the soul, which is consciousness. If I see the symptom of the soul, if I see consciousness, something is conscious, then I can understand it's a soul, even without seeing the soul. So this is a concept which, how to see the soul. This is a concept which is already practiced all over the world. Seeing by symptom. We cannot see the soul with these eyes. First of all, the soul is spiritual. If I want to see any spiritual object, I have to become spiritualized. I need spiritual eyes, and I do not have that. So only after becoming spiritualized can one see spiritual objects. But another thing is it's so small. But even if I could see, small objects, I could not see spiritual objects. God is also spiritual. In this purport of the verse, we see another verse saying a similar thing in the Katha Upanishad 1-18. Okay, I'll share that. Yeah, so this is the verse. Na jayate mriyate va vipaschin. Nayam kutaschin na babhuva kaschit. Ajo nitya shashvata ayam purano na hanyate hanyamani sharire. Look at the similarity with our current verse. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuya. Ajo nitya shashvata ayam purano na hanyate hanyamani sharire. Ajo nitya shashvata ayam purano na hanyate hanyamani sharire. This is in the Upanishads, and it's the same meaning in the Bhagavad-gita. The same verse comes. How is that? How is this possible? The reason is because Bhagavad-gita is actually an Upanishad. Bhagavad-gita comes in Mahabharata. Mahabharata is classified as the Pancham Veda, the fifth Veda. It contains Vedic knowledge, but in a simple way, because as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, it was meant for Striya Vaisha Dvijabandhunam, the friends, the Brahmins who are not qualified, fully qualified Brahmanas, and for women, and for Striya, for the Vaishya caste, and for anyone else who could not probably understand the Vedic knowledge. But Mahabharata also gives Vedic knowledge, but in a simpler way. However, Bhagavad-gita comes in Mahabharata. That is not a Purana. It is not Itihasa like Mahabharata. It's a different format. Bhagavad-gita is an Upanishad. And you can know that if you read Mahabharata, you look at the verses. As soon as you come to Bhagavad-gita, the verses change. They are short and they contain deep meaning. Very few short sentences, they speak deep meanings. These are Upanishadic style of speaking. So but the topics of Bhagavad-gita are similar to the Upanishads, and therefore it's called Gita Upanishad, another name for Bhagavad-gita. The Upanishads are the highest part of the Vedas. In the Vedas, there are four divisions: Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishad. They are meant for the different varnas, for brahmacharis, grihastha, vanaprastha, and for sannyasis. So Upanishads are for the sannyasis, and they're meant to be read with Guru. They're quite high level. Sorry, mosquitoes. So it's a very high level of knowledge in the Upanishads, and therefore it's meant for sannyasis. But Bhagavad-gita, yes, it is high level, but it's being taught through the Guru. Like we are reading Bhagavad-gita and the Guru, Srila Prabhupada, is explaining the verses. So in that way, we are able to get the meanings properly. Otherwise, it's not recommended to read Upanishads on our own. One has to take Diksha, understand the concept, read the Vedas, and then. So we see a similar verse. Like this, many verses occur. Example, in chapter 15 of Bhagavad-gita, Urdhva Moolam Madashaka Ashata Prahura Vyayam. The Krishna says there that it is said that there's an imperishable banyan tree, with its root upwards and its branches downwards, Urdhva Moolam Adashaka Ashwata Prahur Avyayam. The concept of the tree of life, which is depicting the bondage in this material world through material consciousness, which is given in chapter 15, is also explained in the Upanishads. So in that way, the theme of the Upanishads and Gita is similar because Bhagavad-gita is Upanishad. It's the foremost of the Upanishads, Gita Upanishad. So it's not surprising to see the same word. In that verse that's mentioned in the purport, there's a word, vipaschit. Instead of kadachin, vipaschit. Vipaschit means knowledge or consciousness. The soul is full of knowledge, full of consciousness. However, at this particular time, when we are jiva bhuta, that means as in materially conditioned, then we may not have access to that knowledge because it's covered by Maya. But all souls have the potential for full consciousness, full knowledge, and not to be affected by time and space. There's a word in Sanskrit called astikyam. That is a quality of a Brahmana. Shama, Dama, Tapa, Shaucham, Kshantir, Arjavam, Evacha, Jnanam, Vijnanam, Astikyam, Brahma Karma, Svabhavaja. The qualities of a Brahmana are given. And one of them is astikyam. Astikyam means religiosity. A Brahmana is necessarily a religious person. He bases his life on religious principles, accepts God, and accepts the Shastra. The opposite of astikyam is nastik. It's a popular word known. Nastik is an atheist. So what is an atheist? According to the Vedas, an atheist is someone who doesn't accept God, yes, but also who doesn't accept the soul. A person who doesn't accept the soul is an atheist. Not accepting the soul. If someone may say, okay, I accept the soul, but I don't accept he's external servant of God. No. That should also be accepted to qualify as astikyam, as religious. We accept the soul as a eternal fragmental part of God, which is meant to serve God, Krishna. Eternal fragment of Krishna, meant for Krishna service. That is astikyam. And not accepting the soul and not accepting God is a nastik. That is a definition. So a Brahmin, Brahma Janati iti Brahmin. The definition of a Brahmin is he knows Brahman, he knows the supreme truth, and so he is religious by nature. So we see in the Vedic literatures abundant knowledge about the soul. Upanishads explain so much, but in an impersonal way. They don't explain that full knowledge about its connection to God, Krishna. Whereas in Bhagavad-gita, in a very direct, easy, and you can say in a deep way, the link between the soul and Krishna is clearly explained, and in a very deep way. So one can properly understand by looking at it in Bhagavad-gita, the link between the soul and Krishna. So that is a Brahman. That is, and in the Vedas, if one doesn't accept the soul, then he is a Nastik. There is knowledge about the soul in other scriptures outside of Sanatana Dharma, but that knowledge is not so thorough. It's not so deep. For example, in the Bible, they speak about the soul, but if you ask them, they become confused. They talk about spirit, the soul, and the body, and they say we are all three of them, or they say different things than what we are speaking here in Bhagavad-gita. Bhagavad-gita says clearly in chapter 13 of text 2 that dehinosmin yatha deheko, that in the body there is the owner of the body, which is completely distinct from the body, and that as the body changes, this owner, the embodied, he remains in the soul, in the body, and the different changes that take place don't affect the soul. And when the body dies, soul moves to a new body. In that way, we can understand from Bhagavad-gita that the soul is completely distinct from the body. But some hint of the soul is given in the Bible as well as in the Quran. So in the Quran also, they speak about the soul. They call the soul Ruh. and some knowledge is given. But here in Bhagavad-gita, there's this section called Sankhya, chapter 2, text 13 to 38, where so much knowledge is given about the soul. And throughout the Bhagavad-gita, even in chapter 13, a lot of knowledge is given about the soul, in-depth information. So the science of the soul is clearly given in Bhagavad-gita in a very deep way. When we speak about soul, there are two types of souls, as mentioned in the purport of this verse, Atma and Paramatma. Atma is the soul, that is like us, me, and all of you listening to the lecture. You are Atma. There is another category of soul called Paramatma. Param means supreme or super. There is a soul and there's a super soul. The super soul is expansion of Krishna in the hearts of all living entities. The super soul also enters into the atom. Andantarastha paramanu chayantarastham. Paramanu, in the atom and in the heart of the atom. The super soul enters. Super soul also enters into the planets to keep them afloat. Okay, so in this way, the super soul is in all living entities, in the atom and in the planets. Super soul is different from the soul. A lot of knowledge is also given about Paramatma. In the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, a description is given of the super soul and the size in the human body. And they say that is the size with the ring finger to the thumb. That's how they describe it, which is this big. Yeah, ring finger to thumb. The soul is this big, super soul, Paramatma, within the heart. So the super soul is a localized expansion of Krishna in all living entities. Many people confuse the soul and super soul and therefore say that they are pervading the whole creation, they are carrying the planets, and that is a confusion between soul and super soul. But Bhagavad-gita explains clearly. In chapter 13, Krishna speaks about the Kshetragya, the knower of the body. The body, in chapter 13 of Bhagavad-gita, this body is compared to a field. In a field, some people plant grains, and those grains grow as crops and fructify. So similarly, this body is known as a Kshetra, field, because we do actions, and those actions will give reactions, and they'll fructify. They'll fructify as karma phala. The fruits of my karma will be gotten by action in this body. So that concept is there. So in Bhagavad Gita, it says in chapter 13 about the Kshetra, the field, and Kshetragya, the knower of the field. The knower of the field is the soul. However, Krishna says, Kshetragya cha api mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Krishna tells Arjuna that you should know that there is a knower of the field in every field, that soul in every body, but I am the super knower in every field. That means Krishna is also inside each field, each body. So in that way, we understand that there are two souls. There is the soul and super soul. They are different. And knowledge, what is knowledge? Knowledge means to know the soul, the super soul, and the body, and the distinction between the three of them. There's a difference. So the difference between the soul and super soul, and also what is the body. So Kshetra and the Kshetragya, which are two, soul and super soul. Now, very few people know this at that level of knowledge. They may know the body. For example, Buddhists, they understand about the body, but they don't have a concept of the soul. Others may have the concept of the soul, but not the super soul. But someone who understands what is the body, what is the soul and the super soul, and the distinction between them is actually in knowledge. He is described as a knowledgeable person. So that is rare. It's not common. It's very rare because knowledge is rare. How many people have this access to this knowledge? Not many, because they don't want to, or they're not interested. But if someone reaches that level, then he is said to be highly knowledgeable. And he is qualified for self-realization. Now we again look at the verse to see the words which are describing the soul. So here it is. Na jayate, soul does not take birth. Soul does not take birth. What takes birth is the body. The body is born only because the soul is there, but the soul does not take birth. Na mriyate, soul does not die. There are the verses in Bhagavad-gita which explain that soul cannot be cut or dried or burned or dried or wetted, moistened. And the reason is that Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that whatever weapon he has in his chariot, because before they had different weapons, wind weapon, fire weapon, water weapon, different weapons. So whatever weapon he had in his chariot cannot at all affect the soul because it is not subject to these material phenomena. Soul does not die. Whatever Arjuna did in that battle, he could not kill his relatives. His whole point was that he was so apprehensive and he did not want to would not want to kill his relatives. So Krishna is saying, but you cannot kill your relatives. They are deathless. We are deathless. At kadachit, at any time, past, present, or future. We are not saying now we are deathless, but in future we'll die. No, it's not like that. Or now we don't take birth, but one day we'll take birth. No, at any time, soul can never be killed and is not born. For us, it seems like very common knowledge if we follow the Vedas. But for some people, this is phenomenal knowledge. They could not know this. Even for us, we know it, but we have not realized it. So we have to hear it again and again. Therefore, Prabhupada repeats these things again and again. Here, next is 3 points that na bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah. Soul does not come into being. Yeah, we'll look at it here. Soul has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. Just like I'm thinking I've come into being now. I was born, now I have come into being. No, I have not. I'm always there. It's not that I came into being, and in future I will come into being, or someone is unmanifest and will manifest. No, we are always present. We are always, maybe not present here. Someone will take birth somewhere else. But we have not come into being. We are not coming into being now, and we will not come in future into being, come into existence, because we are always in existence. That's the point. Aja, unborn, already here. Na jayate, same thing. Aja, nitya, eternal. Some of these words look similar, but they're not. We want to make it very clear what the soul is. So many adjectives are being used. Nitya. Nitya means eternal. Eternal means that it has existence in past, present, and future. There's no point in time when it will not exist. Soul is existing because it's an eternal servant of God, Krishna. And Krishna is eternal, so his servant is eternal. Shashvata, permanent. The soul is permanent. This material world is not permanent. It is ashashvatam, as mentioned in Bhagavad-gita. There'll be a time when the material world will not be there. But soul is not like that, it is permanent. Puranaha, oldest. The soul is the oldest. It is very old because if anything old you can think about in this material world, just like this material world is now halfway through its cycle. It goes through cycles of Brahma's lifetime. Complete cycle, that is a whole life of Brahma, one life of Brahma is 311 trillion years. Half of that, we already covered half of it. So we would say this world, material world, is very old. It's very old, trillions of years old. But soul is older than that. He's oldest. He has history going back a very long time that we cannot trace the beginning of that time. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. He is not slain when the body is slain. Just in case anybody is still doubtful, after all of these points, again we'll reinforce it. The soul or the self cannot be killed when the body is killed. Sannyasis realize this point, and therefore they go around preaching. In those days, they'll go through forests with wild animals, bandits, but they'll travel alone. And they'll, in this way, preach Krishna consciousness. And they'll be fearless. Why? Because they're so strong? No, because they understand that the soul, that they'll never die, that the super soul is present in them, they're never alone. The super soul is also present in the body of the tiger and the thieves who may waylay him. So everything is under God and the super soul. So that makes them fearless in that way. So soul is not slain when the body is slain. So this is higher knowledge. One has to realize this knowledge. We have to come to realization. At the moment, we have this idea that I am the body. We have not realized the self, the soul. Realizing the self, Atma Sakshatkar. Self-realization is the goal of life. One has to realize that they are the soul. As long as they don't do that, nothing they do will make them happy. Nothing they do will make them peaceful and complete. Because we are part of Krishna, the supreme complete, Purna Purushottam. But as long as we don't realize that, our life will be incomplete. We'll feel incompleteness. And so we'll search for that completeness and happiness on the material platform, which is not possible. The material platform is by nature full of suffering because it's contaminated with more of ignorance and passion. And so it can never give us happiness. To come to happiness, we have to come on the platform of the soul. We have to awaken our spiritual nature, remove that covering, which is called ahankar, false ego. So that path of self-realization is given in Bhagavad-gita. And when we realize the soul, we also realize God, because the soul is part of God. When we fully realize the self, then we realize God, and we realize that we're eternal servant of God. If we don't realize that, then it's not a complete realization. It's incomplete. To realize our identity as a soul, there are many different paths given in the Bhagavad-gita, which are not really different paths, but they are levels. There are various levels of progression on the path to full self-realization. So, for example, karma yoga, to realize the self, that is one way. Another is jnana yoga, and of course, bhakti yoga. In jnana, they realize that I am a spiritual entity, distinct and separate from the material entity. On the karmic path, they realize that there is a transcendence, karma yoga. Karma yoga means doing our duty in varnashram, simply. Just doing our duty and obligations, samskaras, following everything. So then we'll realize that there is a transcendental goal, that's all. But on a platform of jnana, gradually when we do karma yoga, we become more and more detached. We do work, we do our duty, and we give up the result to God. That is karma yoga. The benefits, the profits of karma are given up. And after some time, we realize that I'm giving up the result. So why am I working? So jnana means we stop working. We don't do karma anymore, but we simply meditate on the Supreme and realize that I am a soul distinct from this material world. But a more advanced form, as we practice jnana, we become more and more detached and we get more knowledge, jnana and vairagya. So when we get deeper knowledge, then we understand that I am a soul distinct from this material world, yet I'm part of another greater entity, a super existent Krishna, God, and I'm the eternal servant of God. That is the highest stage of self-realization according to Bhagavad-gita, as given in chapter 6 in the last verse. Chapter 1 to 6 explains a figurative yoga ladder or progression, spiritual progression, evolution of the soul from karma to karma sannyas, jnana, then dhyana. And finally, at the last verse, Krishna says that out of all the yogis, yoginam api sarveshan, madgaten antar atmanam, shradhavan bhajite yumam, samme yukta tamo mata. Krishna says that out of all the yogis, who is the greatest? He says that the greatest yogi is one who is always, I'm just going to show you. This is the verse. Yoginam api sarvesha madgaten antar atmana shadavan bhajate yovam samayukta tamomata. Krishna says, of all the yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So now, whenever we talk about faith, transcendental loving service, bhajate, renders service, transcendental service, serving out of love with faith. This is devotional service. This is bhakti. So Krishna says that the highest stage of worshiping God is bhakti, the highest evolution on the spiritual ladder of consciousness is when one reaches the platform of bhakti yoga. So now there's no need to go through all the other stages. If somebody does bhakti, then he automatically comes on the spiritual platform and he realizes himself as a soul. The reason is because the soul is naturally, the duty of the soul is to do bhakti. And so one who does the process of bhakti, it is a function of the soul. He has acted on the platform of the soul because soul serves Krishna. Body cannot serve. Body is an instrument, but who's serving? Krishna, the soul. So soul is serving Krishna with the body as an instrument. So when we do bhakti, immediately one realizes I am a soul. Therefore, it's shortcut. It's a shortcut method. It's fast and it's complete. So to realize these qualities of the soul and to realize our nature, we have to do the process of bhakti. But the knowledge of Bhagavad-gita will help us to get faith and also give us the way how to do bhakti and a clear understanding of how we are entrapped in this material body and in Maya. And therefore, reading Bhagavad-gita helps us even if we are performing bhakti. It's important to read Bhagavad-gita and understand it. And so verses like this, which explain the nature of the soul, are also very enlightening for us who want to make a distinction between matter and spirit. So, Hare Krishna, I'll stop here. Okay, is there any question on this topic?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So
Yes.
some people will ask that if soul is like 1/10,000 of the tip of the hair, so
Yeah.
they can see it materially somehow with some scientific experiment like they have seen it through atoms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So even if they can see it with a microscope, but the point is that the soul cannot be seen because there's another verse that it says Atashi Krishna Namadi na bhavet grahyam indriye. With material senses we cannot perceive Krishna. So if you study that verse, in the explanation which is given for that verse, which occurs in Nectar of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we cannot see Krishna because he's spiritual and they give that verse. So even we cite that verse to say that with material senses we cannot see the soul or Krishna, because they're spiritual in nature, and spirit and matter are not compatible. So
Yeah. Okay.
but if it's not clear, you can just mention, or is it clear?
Yeah.
The
Yeah. It's
answer.
clear.
Okay,
It's
fine.
answered.
Yeah. Okay, so we are just going over 108 main verses of Bhagavad-gita, and so it will skip quite a few. But the next verses, we look at, again, more verses explaining the nature of the soul. Okay, so I'll stop here then. There's no other question. Okay, Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.